There's definitely something timelessly American about the sound of a V8 engine. It is a quintessential American sound, and maybe I'm just stuck in the past. I don't know, but that sound of that power and that conversion of one type of energy into execution on a drag strip is. Until you've experienced it, I don't know if you can quite understand it. One more time. This is of course my favorite brand, Snap-on. So I'm gonna do I have a slightly scripted show on today, October 23rd, 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. Please watch the video that was produced yesterday, Jonathan Cooey, PhD, a review of the most recent PBS, that's the Public Broadcasting System, public television, show on Frontline, the Frontline program, where they did a review, a documentary of sorts on or biography of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., current head of Health and Human Services in the United States of America. And Jonathan's breakdown was brilliant. It's not just based on his capability, but also the fact that he has been through hell and back and is still fighting. And has had so many experiences and was given so much to think about. We are at a point right now where, just because, I had maybe a shoulder of a jacket that I was wearing visible, where Jonathan Cooey and myself are now in Frontline. It's not an exaggeration to say that his arm and part of my shoulder were visible on Frontline because we were in that audience. And we had great seats. This is at the announcement of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when he was running for president in the year 2023. It was done here in Boston, so it was a pretty easy drive for me. It was a long trip for Jonathan Cooey to get out here and go to that particular event. I don't know if he drove or if he flew, but that much is irrelevant. He lives out in Pittsburgh. Clips of that were used in the program that premiered on 2 days ago. So if today's Thursday, that would have been Tuesday. The Frontline episode premiered, and it was reviewed yesterday by Jonathan Cooey. It's a 1 or 2 hour program, and it took Jonathan 3.5 hours to cover the whole thing, with his own commentary added. We've been assessing the possibility. It was Jonathan who put out the idea first. It took me a long time to really warm up to it, but I'm definitely sold right now on this concept that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has lived his whole life in a Truman Show. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Truman Show movie because the inspiration for the Truman Show movie is odd. I think it was Peter Weir, W-E-I-R. I'm probably mispronouncing that, who's the director of that movie. But there's some comparisons there that are appropriate, and then there's some very, very big differences. And I believe Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and in fact, many of the people in the family that have been part of this, but I think none more than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The man is totally captured. And as far as I know, I'm one of the only people, possibly the only people in the world, who has public video of me questioning Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm on video, not in the Frontline episode last night, but standing in front of an audience mentioning the opioid epidemic in 2022. The only person so far that's on public video talking about the opioid epidemic, as far as I know, and confessing that we had a loss in our family because of it, is me. Somehow, this one channel, I have 2,000 subscribers. I represent the totality, the tip of the spear, of 1 million deaths out of a country of 330 million people. 1 million deaths. 1 out of every 30 deaths in each of the last several years in the United States of America has been a young person from a drug overdose. 1 out of every 30 deaths. And for some reason, no other channels will mention that. And I've seen chat on Jonathan's show, and I've heard elsewhere, well, what do you plan to do about it? And that's a fair question. I am gonna comment on that, though. But look, if someone goes out prospecting, for example, not totally 100% same, but for gold or oil, and if they find gold or oil, are they expected to also dig it up? At some point, it's like, well, why doesn't anyone else care? And it means either my audience is not nearly as caring as I thought they were, or we are all surrounded by monsters who will not allow that fact to get out. So that comes up as well. And other things I'm going to comment on, I'm going to review the Wikipedia page of Estes Kefauver. Because Estes Kefauver, I think, was one of the last great American presidents. I still don't know about Trump. Right now, there's so many levels of nonsense. But everything I've seen, Kefauver was a good person. And Kefauver was assassinated to clear the path. And the assassinations of the Kennedy family followed after Kefauver. I paid, I think it was $50 to have an elevated super chat seen by that guy who was the dark journalist. And I had one question for him. What about Kefauver? And you know what he did? Is he stumbled, he changed the subject to being about crime, and he never mentioned it again. He ran away from it like a coward, or like he's paid to do. His job is to entertain. There's a reason why there's several thousand books about the Kennedy assassination. There's movies, there's documentaries, there's traveling, research shows about it, and nobody will mention the one name that I think unravels almost all of it. Because once you see that, and then you see how these people were played, and especially in the Kennedy family, you're going to go, okay, I see it right now. And as Jonathan very astutely pointed out yesterday, it doesn't end with, it's not like a couple bad people did the assassinations and then walked away. They were done for a reason, and the show has been ongoing ever since. I may review some of the notes that I've gathered on a man named Kevin Ingram, who I'm starting to become more of a believer that much of the story of Jeffrey Epstein, especially after the year 2002, was done specifically to distract from what was done with Kevin Ingram. And this is why, as I've reviewed Whitney Webb books, several thousand pages, not one mention of Kevin Ingram. It's really impressive. And last but not least, and I'll just say it right now, it's probably one of my most profound statements yet that I made at the end of my last program. And I'm going to do a little bit of an intro for Rocktober while celebrating the glorious sound of a V8 engine. I've noticed that effectively, Jonathan Cooey aside, and maybe an exception for Joe Marshall of Liberty Perspective, recommend listening to him, is that 100% of the fake alt media and the fake populist media right now is on board with the belief in this evangelizing that the United States military and the CIA are working together to kill Americans and to take down America. 100%. And they're also suggesting now that they are behind the Kirk assassination, they are controlled by Israel or something, that they did 9/11 and etc. And my most profound statement yesterday, 2 days ago, was, look, let's just throw out there the possibility that the United States military did 9/11, which would mean they planted explosives in the buildings, all of them. That would mean, if the numbers are right, 3,000 people were killed because of that. However, the same people that now are 100% on board with blaming the U.S. military and the CIA for all this stuff, as well as COVID-19, all of them fail to mention population pyramids. All of them bury the information about the opioid epidemic. All of them are on board with this belief that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. All of them hide information about how supplemental oxygen was used to kill people and cause ARDS, symptomatically the same as this mythical coronavirus disease. All of them only talk about hijackers and will not mention the obvious. It doesn't matter how many planes hit the buildings if explosives were already in the buildings. 100% of them are now on board with just only talking about the virus. You can see the things that they will talk about and the things that they won't talk about. None of them will mention the biggest smoking gun with respect to 9/11 research. This one book, all of them, 100%, all of them ignore this book. 100% will ignore the book that talks about using the U.S. military for experimental gene therapy, experimental DNA vaccines for anthrax. A book that was released on September 9th, 2001, even includes the names of the people who ran the 9/11 Commission. All of them. Biological terror attack. All of them ignore it. It's 100%. Which means, right now, these forces behind the Human Genome Project, which is not specifically just the HGP, it's much bigger than that right now. These generally large, non-God-fearing army of people are all blaming the U.S. military, even though the forces behind the advancement of understanding the human genome, 100% of them are all willing to bury an engineered opioid epidemic as well as hospital protocols which killed several 100,000 people, perhaps 1 million. So I offer you this. Who do you want to believe and support? All the channels that are willing to bury information about 1 million people being killed and never talk about it and want to put all the blame on the U.S. military? Isn't it strange how the lying, godless crowd that's willing to do things which have killed at least 1 million people and are still pushing to do more to advance their knowledge of the human genome are all pinning it on military groups, on what? Mormons, Masons, Protestants? Isn't it interesting? Do the math. Who has killed more people and been quiet about it? I am willing to become, and right now I believe I am, the only channel in alt media that is willing to highlight this information and be confident that the U.S. military and the CIA is not out to actively kill Americans. I'm the only channel. And if you don't like that, well, do the math. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not a supporter of war. But do the math. It's only me. Thank you for supporting me, for those who do. For those who want to, P.O. Box 505, Southborough, Massachusetts. I've put all this on the line that I've had, as well as my career. Everything's been put on the side. You know what I have invested. So let's play a little bit of music here. Let's get me into the music. Let me do some quick highs, and then I have a lot of that stuff to go over with you here. It is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. My name is Mark Kulak. It's episode 11384, I think.
All gathered round, and they gazed in wide wonder.
It is Thursday again. Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. Sometimes I have to say the date twice because I will get the year wrong or something along those lines here. And I think that's a good intro here. You must have heard of the Truman Show by now. It's strange that the movie came out when it did. Sometimes just the dates that movies come out can say a lot here. Oh, Truman Show. Truman Show is a 1998 American psychological comedy drama written and co-produced by Andrew Niccol. I don't know. Interesting. By the way, my biological father's last name is Nichols, Nicholls. And the double L, I think, means it's either Scott or Cornwall, England. Of all the things, the one thing that I don't have in my bloodline is English. I have Scott, Irish, German, French, and then Pequot, and then you won't even believe this one, Congolese, and which actually is part of my great grandmother, who, because of the nature of the Schaghticoke Reservation, and there's probably one or two others that I forgot. No Irish. I have no Irish in my ancestry. That's right. I have no Irish. Andrew Niccol, and directed by Peter Weir, W-E-I-R. The film depicts the story of Truman Burbank, played by Jim Carrey, a man who is unaware that he is living his entire life on a colossal sound stage, and that it's being filmed and broadcast as a reality television show that has a huge international following. All of his friends, family members, and his community are paid actors whose job to sustain the illusion and keep Truman unaware of the false world he inhabits. The film's supporting cast includes Laura Linney, Ed Harris. Ed Harris is a big name here. Ed Harris is the guy who plays the director of the whole thing. And I think in the movie, he is, I think, actually the father of the person who is Truman. Holland Taylor, Paul Giamatti, and Brian Delade. So the original spec script was more of a science fiction thriller with the story set in New York City. Producer Scott Rudin purchased the script, set up the film at Paramount Pictures. Paramount. Movie makers these days are such big operations. Any connections between different movie makers is, I don't know how valuable it is. The majority of the filming took place at Seaside, Florida, which is a master planned community. See a film. Now, these dates are what I find curious. It premiered on June 1st, 1998, released on June 5th, 1998. That's 3 years before 9/11. 1995 to 2001 is one of the most interesting timelines you will ever see. And people have asked me, have I put together that timeline? Yeah, I put together little pieces of it. I'm still, in spite of everything I've done, I'm still finding new threads, which are a part of that timeline, which haven't been in there before. I'm still finding new stuff. So, which is why I have so many different disparate timelines, and I need to put them on paper or somewhere, so they can be appreciated and used, at least coalesced somehow. So you know about the plot. And you could watch the trailers. I recommend watching it, okay? It's just to know of the because, I mean, I've heard about the movie, and it's been explained to me many times what the movie was about. And I think I only watched it like 2 or 3 years ago for the first time. And I've only watched it once. I tend to watch a lot of movies many times because I appreciate movies like artwork. You know, you listen to them multiple times and you get different things out of them, not to mention the fact that the way I pay attention, I always tend to miss things. And now the movie itself, let's see here, I wanted to go to the inspiration part here. Filming, soundtrack, media, similar to Utopia. No. The Truman Show has themes that can be perceived as being Gnostic with its symbolism, and Truman exiting the world. Okay, so this is Collider.com. The Truman Show inspiration came from the tragic life of Princess Diana. Peter Weir is a filmmaker renowned for his ability. 1998 psychological dramedy. The Truman Show explored the nation's obsession with reality television and the dark side of celebrity culture. Okay, so set in a not-so-distant future, The Truman Show centers on the everyman Truman Burbank, or Jim Carrey, who is unwittingly the star of the world's most popular reality show. Truman lives in a massive studio set that resembles a real small town and interacts solely with actors pretending to be his close family, friends, and colleagues. While the program is broadcast 24/7 to an audience of passionate fans around the world, the show's creators, Christoph, played by Ed Harris, chooses to keep Truman in the dark about his status in order to make the series more authentic. Weir used the tragedy of Princess Diana as a primary inspiration for The Truman Show, creating a deeply disturbing exploration of the media obsession with and celebrity culture. Hello, Ancient. Hello, Ancient. Good show last night, Ancient. Hello, Christy. Good to have you here. Tazik, hello. Filmed in Seaside, Florida. Ian was a meddler. Whatever. Probably. I don't know. What I did. The funniest thing Ian said was that the people on Jonathan's chat were paid. It's hilarious because trust me, I there's no money in this. There's no money, so he could have just been innocently misled. I don't know, but I mean, really, I've made up a phrase in my head. I think the only thing that is sometimes more upsetting than the truth is the absolute. I should say is the truth is the absolute opposite of it. Opposite of it. When people can accuse you of something that is so 100% the opposite of your values and state that it's true, I don't know why. It just that to me is just it's an outrage. Or it should just be funny, but it can be an outrage, Anyways, so the thing with Princess Diana is Princess Diana was not born into this. Princess Diana, as far as I know, I could be naive here, was not born thinking she was going to be a queen or a princess. She, because of the path of her life, because of her marriage, of course, she wound up having to live life being photographed at every opportunity. Everything she did was seen as a role model or portrayed as something to judge. Everything she did, everything she ate, everything about her. Now, maybe some people would love that. Maybe she did like it and pretended not to like it. I don't know. I'm not going to assess Princess Diana, but I think it's fair to say that she was not born into a situation where she thought everything about the world was fake. She got married to someone who was a prince and was on a path to maybe even someday become a queen, I believe, right? But she knew what was real and what wasn't. It was simply being tortured by the fact of her life's decisions. That is not the same. That's so not the same as the main character, as Truman Burbank, the man that Jim Carrey plays, right? I would say it's totally the opposite. 21 people here. Very good. Totally the opposite. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring it up because it doesn't take much thinking to realize that they are very, very different things. So if they're so different, if Princess Diana did not live in a Truman Show, she simply had to deal with the fact that she was going to get mauled by paparazzi everywhere she went. Why was she the inspiration for the movie? The real inspiration for the movie, now I haven't searched for this yet, okay? But I'm going to throw out, sometimes you get a sense of something that's true, and you have to start just throwing the ideas out there. I'll bet you someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was the actual inspiration for the Truman Show. I wouldn't be surprised. Even the name Truman is a president. I always thought that was odd. Why would you use the name president? It's like, why not call it the Bush Show? Well, that would be probably a naughty movie. But the Obama Show. Well, Obama wasn't president yet. The Clinton Show. The Reagan Show. You wouldn't call it the Reagan Show. Everyone's going to think, oh, that's the president. You wouldn't call it the Carter Show. You would think it was the president. You wouldn't call it the Nixon Show, right? But you wouldn't think, right? But Truman, Truman, it's not the president. It's because he's a true man. Oh, by the way, Truman was also the guy who dropped the atomic bomb. And there you go. Truman was the president that dropped the atomic bomb. Of course, he didn't actually. Nobody dropped an atomic bomb. But anyways, I think the movie is really about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think at one point they might have been trying to play John F. Kennedy Jr. to be the same thing. But John F. Kennedy Jr., for whatever reason, his own smarts, maybe he had a couple good allies, was able to stay out of it. I think John F. Kennedy Jr. realized, what he was born into. I'm not saying that he was a wonderful person or a bad person, but I think he had some level of self-awareness. I think he was able to escape enough. I think, if an analogy is appropriate, I think John F. Kennedy Jr. was able to sneak out in the evenings and maybe smoke some butts, outside of the stage studio, and realize that most of his life they were trying to get him to think it was a Truman Show, but I think he was self-aware enough. And I'm making the same mistake that I was furious that people made in the Frontline video, assuming that they knew what people were thinking. How does anyone know? There's a lot of times where we don't even know, and I'm assuming most of you guys are the same way. Your closest friend or your life partner, every once in a while, may be dealing with something, right? You don't even know what. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm thinking. But anyways, this whole, this person thought that, and then they felt this way, and then they felt that way. How do you know? I've done at least 100 videos related to Robert Malone. I don't know what he's thinking. I have no idea what he's thinking. I don't know when he's happy or sad or frustrated or ticked off or what his internal ambitions are. All I know is here's the evidence of what he did and what he said and the order that he did it. I have no idea what he's thinking. It's stupid. Oh, he was really upset. So then he decided to do this, and then he really wanted this, and that's why he did that. Like, I don't know. But based upon his actions, I think the evidence suggests that JFK Jr. had a level of self-awareness. But I don't think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does. And I think to this day, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. doesn't know. The time that I was able to confront Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and this is true. No, as far as I know, nobody else is on camera talking about the opioid epidemic in the context of mentioning like their own child having died from it. Recorded in front of a crowd to the current HHS Secretary of the United States of America, other than me. I'm the only person in the world. That's it. What does that get you? It gets you 2,000 views to represent 2,000 subscribers on YouTube to represent 1 million deaths. If I wanted viewers, I would just do Lego videos. I would get more viewers. But anyways, I guess sadly, I guess what this means is, Robert F. Kennedy's Jr. response was not, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry." He didn't even say, "I'm sorry to hear that." Now, even if you don't mean it, all right? I mean, there's a level of leadership where people are going to come to you with your problems, with their sadness, with their sorrow, with their loss. And you can't, maybe you're just having a bad day. Maybe you're tired, you're self-absorbed, whatever the case, right? You have to fudge it sometimes. I wasn't expecting him to get on the stage and give me a hug, but he didn't even acknowledge it. which means he is so cold. He is so cold that it went right over him. Or he's so programmed that he couldn't even emotionally respond. He could not emotionally respond because he is so programmed. He is surrounded and protected. And I promise you, that is one of the last times RFK Jr. ever got a hot mic, ever got a microphone where people could ask questions. And that was me. Likewise, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had that 2-hour speech in Boston, the one where a little bit of myself and Jonathan Cooey was caught on the camera, just little tiny pixels, a few pixels, okay? I made Frontline, even though it was just a few pixels. As far as I know, I'm the only person in that audience of 2,000 people. Maybe it was more. I don't know. A few thousand people anyways. I think it was about 2,000. The only person who did not applaud was me. Now, I would have applauded just out of congratulations and kindness. I didn't applaud because I couldn't believe that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went 2 hours without mentioning the opioid epidemic. A man who ran on a platform of Maha, went 2 hours without mentioning an opioid epidemic. 2 hours, even though supposedly drug addiction defined his early life. 2 hours, even though his closest sibling died of a drug overdose. 2 hours, even though we were in the middle of this opioid epidemic that was taking 120,000 lives that year. 2 hours. He didn't spend 1 minute talking about the opioid epidemic. 1 minute, 1 second. Not even a hat tip to its very existence. A man that was running to be president, or at the very least spearhead this renewed interest in health, went 2 hours without mentioning something that was 1 out of every 30 deaths. I don't mean like 1 out of every 30 people under the age of 30. I mean 1 out of every 30 deaths is a young person dying of a drug overdose. And I say young person because when I go to these ceremonies, I don't know of anybody who's like over age 45 dying of fentanyl overdoses. By the way, yesterday, or 2 days ago, there was an event out in California. It was a softball team, adult softball team, where 4 people died at the same time of a drug overdose. 4 people died yesterday. They found 4 people in a room. Now, yeah, maybe, adults shooting up heroin, bad idea. I get it. Okay, I get it. But 4 people, and I think at least a few of them were parents, were fathers. 4 people died of a fentanyl overdose. They didn't say fentanyl, but I'm assuming it was fentanyl. You have to, almost no one dies of, bad coke. 4. That was just 2 days ago. And I think they were all under the age 40, probably in their 30s or late 20s. 4. Anyways, Bobby didn't acknowledge it. So I'm going down that path here. I'm highlighting that. How is it possible that someone whose drug addiction impacted him so personally it didn't even acknowledge it? Other than he has been damaged by whatever drugs he was subjected to and by people around him. He is so insulated. He is so thoroughly insulated that he can't even understand the context of these things. And if he ever did start to think about it, the control grid around him, the Ed Harris controlling the cameras, and the people reading the scripts to him will get him back on track. I don't think the Truman Show was about Princess Di. I suspect it was actually about, I'm even going to say very clearly and specifically, RFK Jr. I think RFK Jr. has been the man. Now, there might have been a few people that have been subjected to this, and John F. Kennedy Jr. might have been the person that they preferred. John F. Kennedy Jr. was, you have to be blind to not acknowledge that he was a stunningly good-looking guy. Okay? He was firing on many cylinders in many ways, okay? He may have been a terrible leader, terrible president. I don't know how much of a businessman person he was. But I think that would have been the preference. I mean, just to say John F. Kennedy Jr., just saying it. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a New York strip. Just the name, okay? The name is, wonderful New York strip. Most people would love to have New York strip for dinner. John F. Kennedy Jr. saying that's the Chateaubriand. That is fillets with a side of foie gras. That's the name I think they really wanted, which is why they had to kill him, because I think he understood he wasn't in the Truman Show. Or I should say, I think he understood that was a plan, and I think that he wasn't buying it. He was kind of working outside of it. And after the death of Robert of JFK Jr., and remember, JFK Jr., didn't he have that magazine? What was the name of his magazine? I can't think of the name of JFK Jr.'s magazine. You guys know. What was JFK Jr.'s magazine? George. Thank you, George. Okay, it was George. And when did George? Thank you. Good one, Reginald. When did they stop printing George? George magazine. George magazine. They stopped. First issue was September 1995. They stopped making it in January 2001. Of course, he died in 98, right? 98 or 99? Yeah, so he died in a plane crash in 1999. The magazine ceased publication 2 years after his death. February 1997 edition of George with the tagline Survive a Guide to the Future, in which Kennedy interviews Bill Gates, has become most sought after. So it's interesting that they stopped making this magazine January 2001, which means they probably were starting to wrap up sometime around 2000. But another magazine then comes onto the scene. In fact, I'm just putting this together right now. You guys if you're a supporter of this program, if you watch this program, you're now going to see how freaking important this topic is. Because in 1999, another magazine hits the scene called Talk. And Talk is brought to you by Harvey Weinstein. Talk is brought to you by Bob Weinstein. Talk is brought to you by this Tina Brown, who's a journalist from the UK, who does a lot of work at the New York Times. Talk magazine promotes Hillary Clinton. Talk magazine picks up where George was leaving off. Can you see it right now? There's a reason why this magazine doesn't have a Wikipedia page. There's a reason why most people don't know about this magazine. This magazine has been buried. This magazine is as important, and I'm going to suggest even more important than George was. This magazine has clues in there that they knew there was going to be a terrorist attack in New York City in late 2001. Almost every issue covers Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden. Talk magazine is what breaks the story of with this very long expose, which was already in the works for several months, by the way, of a man named Kevin Ingram, a black bond trader in New York City, considered to be one of the most, one of the biggest rising stars in the black entrepreneur, black business community of the United States of America, who in spite of, by all accounts, being totally above board and a hard worker and everything else right up until 1998, then decides to start goofing off at work and then getting involved in and wanting to make some money on the side. So he decides to make funds available to launder money to enable terrorists, including the Taliban and Osama bin Laden, to buy military equipment, which was improperly procured by who else? From the U.S. military. Talk Magazine also provides extensive coverage, probably one of the longest articles you'll ever read, of RFK Jr. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is being pushed in this magazine as well. RFK Jr., of course, covered in the same magazine where we're highlighting Al Gore for president, as well as Osama bin Laden. Now, I'm not sure. Now, Talk Magazine had a funny, if Talk Magazine was involved in this one, the piece, there's a few things that don't line up. First off is the movie Truman Show comes out in 1998, which means production of it started in 1997. I don't think RFK Jr. was in any position to run for president in 2000. I do suspect that RFK Jr. was being aligned to run for senator of a New York state. I think that was the plan. RFK Jr. They wanted RFK Jr. as a senator, but Hillary Clinton decided to move in and become a senator. And Hillary Clinton's, even though she wasn't from New York State, well, if Wikipedia has a page for it, that would be new. One person in the chat does say it here. Let's see here, because they didn't last I checked here. Okay, so it's there. Well, I stand corrected. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure I looked for it and I could not find it. But I've been wrong before. Thank you for the correction, and I appreciate that. So I think right now I have one of the largest collections out there of the Talk Magazine, which only ran for about 2 years. And then it, too, abruptly ceased publication after 9/11. Its last issue came out it was January of 2002. I suspect that something about this was related to narrative control and is more connected with the Weinsteins and the Kennedys. And I think Harvey Weinstein himself has a role with the narration control network around RFK Jr. I don't know who runs it, though. I don't know who runs it. It could be related to Peter Weir, the man who is involved with the directing the Truman Show. It could be. But sometimes you're best outsourcing just to keep people off their feet. And I have a hunch that it's something more connected to Harvey Weinstein. If it's connected to Harvey Weinstein, that means it's probably also connected to, of course, because Harvey Weinstein is one of the biggest financial supporters of Hillary Clinton. Also among her biggest supporters are other people in Hollywood, such as Larry David, whose picture was included in the Frontline show from 2 days ago. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to prove it. This is still hypothetical. I should say this is still more speculative. But the life of RFK Jr. fits almost perfectly with what is described in the movie The Truman Show. Whereas articles such as "It was Princess Di," it just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I'm willing to accept all kinds of potential conspiracies about her, or I should say alternative explanations. I'm not gonna dig into that accident, but from what is well understood anyways, or well documented, she was not born into a Truman Show. And I think it would be pretty hard for someone, once they're age 18 or 20 or whatever it was, at that point, be tricked into living in a Truman Show without realizing it. Okay, you already have too many connections and too many friends. Whereas Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was the perfect case of every moment of his life was on film. His whole life was captured. All of his friends were captured. And I think even now, if you look at the network around him, holy cow. Now, also looking at the network around Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Are two very, very important people, such as Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, and Dr. Merrill Nass. So important that they are part of Children's Health Defense because they both played huge roles in September 11th, 2001. Robert Malone and Merrill Nass played large roles in the story of September 11th, 2001. It is what it is. They both, Merrill may not know everything. Robert Malone, I believe, knows everything. There's a reason why Robert Malone's associates were included in a book that came out the week after 9/11 called Big Shot AIDS Vaccine, which was celebrating the future of, genetic vaccines, probably anthrax vaccines, all made possible with, by the research of AIDS. Is the reason why Merrill Nass was in Congress 1998, 1999, 2000, working with the U.S. military. Of course, saying the military's bad. Military wants to kill people. They want to kill their own troops for some unknown reason. And the old anthrax vaccines are bad. That's Merrill Nass's storyline. Of course, working with Christopher Shays, a Connecticut U.S. Senator, and a variety of other people. Old anthrax vaccine bad. Creating the backstory necessary to use an experimental gene therapy vaccine, as said in this book, that every other citizen journalist ignores. Every single one. Now, I wouldn't be so hyper-focused on the fact that they were ignoring one book if it wasn't for the fact that everyone that ignores this book also ignores the use of supplemental oxygen to cause ARDS during COVID. They also all ignore the vast quantities of people dying of within the opioid epidemic and how it led to life expectancy drops. They also hyper-focus on plane hijackers and never mention the fact that it doesn't matter if 20 planes hit each of the buildings. They already had bombs in them. And by the way, what a magic trick that architects and engineers AE 9/11, that garbage organization, have done. AE 9/11, where they will show you 1 to 2 hour documentaries about how the Twin Towers were blown up. They show you the video. They show you the explosions. They show you all the physics about it. And then somehow, I don't know how the architects and engineer people do this. They talk for an hour or two about how the Twin Towers were blown up. And then somehow they pivot the conversation from, well, now that we know they were blown up, let's figure out why they were blown up by letting people hijack planes. Somehow, the architect and engineer people, they do this pivot. And most people, myself included, have been subjected to this pivot for years and didn't pick up on it. They, and nobody picks up on it until it just hit me a few days ago. Like, wait, why are we talking hijackers? Oh, because you want to blame hijackers on the military. I get it. And I'm willing to be the only channel out there that's saying, look, I don't think the CIA and the United States military is running around killing Americans. I don't believe it. And even if they were, the people that want me to believe they are the same ones that are not willing to say we had 1 million deaths in the United States of America in the opioid epidemic, and 1 out of every 30 deaths, all ages, all reasons, all causes, for the last several years has been a younger person in the United States dying of a drug overdose. Data which has been used by the same people that would pin everything on the CIA and the U.S. military, the same people that are willing to then use the data of dropping life expectancy to say that proves the U.S. military wants to kill Americans with a poisonous vaccine. I'm willing to be that only channel. No one else will just say it that simply and that clearly. I think all of this nonsense that the CIA is just running around, to kill Americans, and as part of all these assassination plots is bogus. I think the reason why people are encouraged to say it is because it's not true. If it was as true as talking about the opioid epidemic, you wouldn't have heard about it unless you watched a channel with 2,000 subscribers such as mine. When you say the truth, such as we had an engineered drug epidemic, 1 million dead over the last, 14 years from that, we went from, 18, 19,000 fatal drug overdoses a year to a regular 100 to 120,000, and no one will talk about it, mostly young people, data that they then used to then justify a deadly novel virus narrative and to push experimental gene therapy vaccines. When you say the truth like that, you only get 2,000 subscribers. However, you get books, you can be on Frontline, you can be on CNN, you can be, Whitney Webb, millions of copies everywhere. You can talk for hours, you can have conferences and so on, saying CIA, military, CIA, CIA, military, Thiel, Epstein, Thiel, Israel, military, CIA, DOD, military, CIA, Masons, and so on and so forth. That's because they get amplified. If I were to say, space aliens blew up the Twin Towers with space lasers, I could probably get several 100,000 more subscribers if that was my baseline viewpoint. So, if that is allowed to get out there, similarly, you should observe that the same narratives of, it's all the CIA and the military, that also gets out there. That is precisely because it's not true. United States, we have a civilian-staffed military. I have family members and friends who have served in it. They're not running around eager to kill their other family members and friends and neighbors. Why are we so eager to blame this thing? Now, I'm not saying it's free of corruption, but God, gee willikers, can't you see it? Anyways. Same thing with blaming that. Going back to the Truman Show story here. Let's talk about the man that nobody, and I'm already an hour in, amazing how time flies, nobody will talk about here. Estes Kefauver. Born 1903, died, assassinated. August 10th, 1963. Not long before JFK was killed. Was an American politician from Tennessee, a member of the Democratic Party. He served in the United States House of Representatives from 1939 to 1949 and the United States Senate from 1949 until his death in 1963. He was the winner of most of the 1952 Democratic Party presidential primaries, though he was not nominated at the convention. I'm going to repeat that. He was the winner. Estes Kefauver was the winner of most of the 1952 Democratic Party presidential primaries. He won more Democratic primaries in 1952 than anyone else. And for some reason, nobody knows about him. You know why? You're not supposed to talk about him. When you talk about Estes Kefauver, you're silenced. When you talk about Estes Kefauver, you're capped at 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, no matter how much you do and how much you spend on what it is you do. If I were to say, I don't know, that, Jewish Zionism or just something, or space aliens, or, someone revived, a dead mummy from the pyramids, I could get millions of additional subscribers. Maybe not millions, but you know what I mean. Or if I just said CIA, military, everything, I can get tons of extra subscribers. Tons. That's all I need to do. But when you cap it here, that's it. He was, by all accounts, the most loved politician in the American government at that time. And no one is allowed to talk about him. Now, it's not as if, I was just digging in the wilderness and stumbled upon this, okay? It's not that I'm a great researcher, although I'm pretty good. It's that everyone else is so incompetent. In fact, everyone else is there to make sure you live in their Truman Show. And I'm here to get you out of the Truman Show that they want you to live in. After leading a much publicized investigation to organized crime in the early 1950s, he twice sought his party's nomination for President of the United States. In 1956, he was selected at the Democratic National Convention to be the running mate of presidential nominee Adlai Stevenson. He continued to hold the United States Senate seat, after the Stevenson-Kefauver ticket lost to the Eisenhower-Nixon ticket. Kefauver was named chair of the United States Senate Antitrust and Monopoly Subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee in 1957 and served as its chairman until his death. Let's see here. Early life. Cary Estes Kefauver was born in Madisonville, Tennessee, the son of local hardware merchant Robert Cook Kefauver and his wife, Fredonia Bradford Estes. Kefauver was introduced to politics at an early age when his father served as a mayor of their hometown. The elder Kefauver would later be an active and enthusiastic helper in his son's campaign until his death at the age of 87 in the year 1958. Kefauver attended the University of Tennessee and received his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1924. He was a tackle and guard on his college football team. He taught, by the way, Ed Harris, fun fact, Ed Harris of the who plays the director in the Truman Show, he went to Columbia University, and he was a varsity football teammate with former United States Attorney General Eric Holder. Just saying. If anyone understands, growing up in a Hollywood, or I should say Broadway family, knows what would be required, it would have been Ed Harris. Oh, Ed Harris was also in the Harvey Weinstein Miramax movie called Buffalo Soldiers, which came out on September 9th, 2001, and then had to be shelved for 2 years because 9/11 was a preemptive event that they didn't expect. A movie that portrays heroin-addicted U.S. military personnel killing U.S. military, leadership in order to acquire weapons and then sell them illegally to terrorists in exchange for money, which they were then going to use to make more synthetic drugs. That's funny. Isn't that a nice, warm, anti-patriotic movie for you? Almost as if, and it's right in line with what everyone else says. The military is just a bunch of drug-addicted monsters that go around and kill people. They'll blame them 9/11 on the military. They're going to blame COVID on the military. And you know who's going to blame all this on the military? The same godless heathens who are behind the Human Genome Project and taking over control of human evolution. The same godless people that wrote hospital protocols that murdered people. Just flat out murdered people with supplemental oxygen. The same godless people that refuse to talk about the opioid epidemic. The same godless people behind the Human Genome Project are the same exact people that now want to pin every bad thing in the U.S. history on the U.S. military and the CIA. The same godless people that probably ran the Truman Show of RFK Jr. The same godless people. And once I saw that connection, I finally saw it clear as day. Screw it. Even if I'm wrong, I think the internet as a whole has earned a spot for at least one person that's willing to call out, hey, isn't it odd that all these people that are willing to talk about how the Human Genome Project and people behind the advancement of DNA vaccines that are willing to do things to kill millions of people at a shot are all willing to get on podcasts and never mention those things and then blame all of their crimes on the U.S. military and the CIA. They're even willing to blame the death of JFK and RFK Sr. on the CIA and the U.S. military. Isn't that crazy? They're willing to have thousands of books written, conferences, get-togethers, and all kinds of other rah-rahs. Can't you see it right now, clear as day? I can see it. If there's any divide that's left right now, it's between godless, God-fearing, and godless. People that believe that, you know what, we're all going to be judged. We were all created by somebody, by something which we can barely understand. And saying that you are created by a God doesn't mean that there's some guy in a robe and sandals walking around the clouds. It's an abstraction that allows us to personify something which is beyond our capabilities to describe. We can't describe God. We can barely describe, how water boils. We can't describe God. It's just an abstraction, a concept for something which is real. Doesn't mean that, I think his sandal is coming on then. I can see it behind that cloud. No, it's just a way to talk about it. Because we don't have the gift of understanding all of this stuff yet. All we know is that there's something there that obviously created all of this nonsense. This beauty, I mean. Versus a religion where people are trying to create God. Because a religion where there is no God unless people learn enough about the world and create God and bring God into the world. A religion where people believe that they can create weapons that can blow up the earth because we are now gods. If there's any divide that's left in the world, it is between God-fearing and people that want to become gods. I can see that division as well. Anyways, getting away, moving back up from the tangent here of Ed Harris, back up to Kefauver here. Let's see here. Kefauver attended the University of Tennessee and received his Bachelor of Arts in 1924. He was a tackle football team. You can skip over some of these details. He ran for Senate young, 1938. And then went to the House of Representatives. In particular, he backed the controversial Tennessee Valley Authority, best known for his successful bid to rebuff the efforts of Tennessee Senator Kenneth McKellar to gain political control over the energy agency. Interesting. So, he's a Democrat. He's a New Dealer. I'm not saying I agree with everything, all of his ideas. But, the economy was really a pile of shit. Whatever caused it, however it was engineered, I don't know. But, if you're looking at some guy who is probably, 30 years old, who's looking at government programs to try to get things, back going again with as much world experience as he would have had back then, you can't think that he's some sort of, monster because he's looking at government programs to do it. Everyone should be trying to do that back then. So, so he then gets involved in the. You can read about it. His interest in antitrust is very interesting because it was antitrust that was used later on in his career, and this is where I'm going to skip over the part where he's into fighting organized crime. U.S. Senate, okay. After being elected to the United States Senate in 1948, Kefauver guided the Keller, C-E-L-L-E-R, could be Seller, Kefauver Act of 1950, which amended the Clayton Act by plugging loopholes that allowed a corporation to purchase a competing firm's assets through the United States Senate. Between 1957 and 1963, his U.S. Senate Antitrust and Monopoly Subcommittee investigated concentration in the United States economy, industry by industry, and it issued a report exposing monopoly practices in the steel, automotive, bread, and pharmaceutical industries. Again, maybe that was a good idea, maybe not. Some industries lend themselves to be natural monopolies, I guess. Some don't. Sometimes it's for the betterment of the country, sometimes not. I don't know. You could talk about that until the cows come home. But here we go. Kefauver's Antitrust and Monopoly Subcommittee also held hearings on the pharmaceutical industry between 1959 and 1963 that led to enactment of his most famous legislative achievement, the Kefauver-Harris Drug Act of 1962, after Kefauver expressed shock about the excess profits that United States drug companies were taking at the expense of U.S. consumers. The positions that he had made him even more unpopular with his state's party's machine than ever before, so he became unpopular even within the Democratic Party. This is noteworthy, especially after fellow Tennessee Senators Albert Gore Sr., Majority Senate Leader Lyndon B. Johnson of Texas, and then he became one of only 3 Southern senators not to sign the so-called Southern Manifesto of 1956. He was named in a popular account of the Senate as a Southern senator who had been excluded from the Southern Caucus due to his opposition to the filibuster and less impeccable defense of states' rights. Not perfect. In fact, these unpopular positions, combined with his reputation as a maverick with a penchant for sanctimony, earned him so much enmity, even from other senators, that one Democratic insider felt compelled to dub him the most hated man in Congress. And the most hated man in Congress was also the most loved man amongst U.S. citizens. Most Americans loved Kefauver. Kefauver also held hearings that targeted indecent publications and pornography. Among his targets were pinups, including Betty Page, and magazines that featured them. Sounds like big government getting too big, but it also seems like, can somebody tell me something good which has happened to the United States because of our excess pornography? Has anything good come out of it? Do we have bigger families? Do we have happier people? Do we have lower suicide rates? Do we have less drug use? It seems as though our lax approach to pornography is very, very, very well correlated with a crumbling of our nation. There's not a ton of video on the internet with Kefauver in it. Let's see, if we go to YouTube here, you can see some clips from him. Here he is being nominated for president. The announcement that he was dead in 1963.
A Senate investigation of organized crime catapulted Senator Estes Kefauver into national prominence in 1951. The Tennessee lawmaker was chairman and chief crime buster. Fame also came to the senator as a campaigner for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1952 and again in 1956. Today he is mourned by his family and Americans everywhere after his death at the age of 60. This soft-spoken, folksy man who turned the coonskin cap into a personal campaign symbol. In the 56 race for the presidential nomination, Kefauver lost to Adlai Stevenson for the second time, but wound up winning the vice presidential spot on the ticket by defeating a rising young Democratic figure, Senator John F. Kennedy. The Stevenson ticket lost.
He beat John F. Kennedy. He was so well loved.
Lost both times to Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower.
So consider this. If you're part of a group that is going to kill JFK, if you're going to assassinate John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson is the vice president. Lyndon B. Johnson's going to become president. Who's going to backfill the vice president role? Now, because of the nature of the way a new vice president is appointed, which up until that time was not as well defined as it is right now, you risk Kefauver getting in office. Another thing is that Kefauver, one of his biggest supporters, and as far as I can tell, was John F. Kennedy. If JFK was killed, the one senator that was most likely to do an honest investigation as to why JFK was killed would have been Estes Kefauver. So Kefauver was both the one person that would have spearheaded an appropriate investigation, and he's probably the person that would have been called for, at least by many U.S. citizens, to become a new vice president. These are two very uncomfortable things
to any conspirators planning to kill John F. Kennedy.
Now, why JFK was killed, most people like to say, something to do with nukes or crime or Jews or the Catholic Church or I don't know. But do not underestimate how big the phrase safe and effective is. Do not underestimate how big the Human Genome Project is. Because at this time in 1963, in this summertime, we just had an event in England called the Future of Man. Not the future of the United States, not the future of the U.S. Army, not the future of traveling, not the future of cuisine, not the future of pornography, not the future of transgenderism. It wasn't about the future of borders. It wasn't about the future of space. It wasn't about the future of medicine. It wasn't about the future of education. It wasn't about the future of race. It was about the future of man. It was about the future of the human race. And the most important thing about the future of the human race is we, humans, are now going to get involved in our own evolution. We're going to bring God into the world, as a matter of fact. Because God doesn't exist until we make him. And we can't make God until we advance science. And Kefauver's little thing here with this the Kefauver-Harris Amendment was a real monkey in the wrench.
I totally meant to say monkey wrench there, but I'm just going to leave it.
He just took medicine, which up until that time could have been anything. A future where medicine, could have been used experimentally, where, oh my goodness, now we have to test it. We have to test it and verify it does what they say it does. And Kefauver's assassination came in 1963 at a time where they were debating investment into the space program, which sounds unrelated. But as I was starting to read the other day, as I was starting to share with you the other day, one of the people who presented at that conference, The Future of Mankind, was Joshua Lederberg, another name that, just like Estes Kefauver, no one wants to talk about. No one who talks about Kefauver and Harris, or an opioid epidemic that's killed 1 million people, or hospital protocols, or highlighting the stupid obvious fact that it doesn't matter how many planes were or were not hijacked. You don't even need to prove that the planes were real or not. You're getting off track. Let's look at this video. This video shows the plane was there, and then it looks pixelated, and then there's the wing. It doesn't matter. Bombs were in the buildings. Who put the bombs in the Twin Towers? Who put them there? They didn't just magically appear. They didn't come with the planes. They were put there. Who was planning to blow up the Twin Towers and why? Oh, gee, I don't know. Were they planning to do a suitcase nuke biological terror narrative to advance DNA vaccines, which was one of the next big steps of the Human Genome Project, and advancing the evolution of the human species? Maybe that had something to do with it. Joshua Lederberg saw the advancement of and the funding of the space program as a key gateway to advancing knowledge of the evolution of how to take over control of the evolution of the human species. As this paper that I started to read the other day suggests. So, of course, that's when he was killed. And Kefauver's assassination is one of the most stunning assassinations of all time. Because he died on the Senate floor. He wasn't speaking in Butler, Pennsylvania. He wasn't talking at a Mormon college. He died on the Senate floor. He went from tall, upright, walking around, healthy and smiling, to having a sudden, unexpected heart attack. He stumbled on for another day, and then he died in Bethesda Naval Hospital. He was poisoned on the Senate floor. I don't think any other American politician has been assassinated in the Capitol building. And somehow, this assassination, which does more to illuminate the world around JFK, what matters really, the Cuban Missile Crisis, come on. That's a cupcake party compared to the topic of taking over control of the human species. If you want to get subscribers, you can't talk about these things. You can't talk about Kefauver. You can't talk about Lederberg. You can't talk about the opioid epidemic. You can't highlight, hey, those buildings wouldn't have come down if they didn't already have explosives in them. You can't say, it doesn't matter if there was a virus or not. People were killed with protocols, with an engineered opioid epidemic, and they expected more people to die anyways because of the population pyramid characteristics. You talk about those things, you get 2,000 subscribers. 2,000 subs. And now this is only going to get worse because now, thanks to the work of Jonathan Cooey, thanks to his work, we can now seek and state confidently that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself is the ultimate Truman Show victim. In fact, it's possible, this is speculation, but it's possible that the Truman Show is actually about RFK Jr. specifically. That's how deep this goes. And the whole Kennedy family has been set up to be taken down. Kennedy family had quite a few patriots in them. No one talks about the other brother of JFK and RFK that died in World War II, sacrificed his life in a plane. Not many families with that type of money or connections are willing to put themselves in the positions where they'll die for the United States of America. Very few families will. But a lot of Kennedys did. Did they have money? Yeah. It's no crime to have money. It's no crime to have money. Good for you. Did they grease some palms? Sure, absolutely. I do have at least one video here of Kefauver, not a talk show, but a game show. And I like it because it's you can kind of get a feel for his affect here.
And now we come to the regular special feature of our program, the appearance of our mystery celebrity. And since our experts over here would recognize our famous guest on sight, we've provided them with blindfolds. Are all those blindfolds in place, panel?
Yeah.
Good. Will you come in, mystery challenger, and sign in, please? Next to me. Panel, as you know, in the case of our mystery celebrity, we dispense with the usual amenities and get right down to the general questioning. Let's begin the general questioning with Miss Francis.
Are you in the entertainment business?
No, ma'am. No, that's one down the line to go. All right, Mr. Block.
Are you in the public eye?
Slightly.
Slightly?
He was running the
have you ever
anti-crime
been on
hearings.
television?
Yes.
You have been on television?
Yes.
Has it been a regular program?
No. Not as we accept regular programs. No, I don't think so. 2 down and 8 to go. Miss Kilgallen.
Would you say that you were on a special events program?
No. Well, now this, sir, gives us a little trouble. In special events, you mean the whole broad field of programs for the Red Cross and that sort of thing, Miss Kilgallen? Anything that's outside of the normal entertainment
Can we
program?
have a little conference for a
That's
second?
right.
Well, in that context, I think we can say yes, and that this is not a regular weekly studio program, if that's what you're looking for.
Yes. You say you're not in the entertainment world.
No.
By that, are you ruling out the sports world, too?
Yes.
Are you in what is loosely called public life?
Yes.
Are you in politics?
Yes.
Is it New York politics?
No. 3 down and 7 to go, Mr. Seth.
Are you in federal politics?
Yes.
Are you at present mixed up in a very famous investigation?
Are you at present mixed up in a very famous investigation? Yes.
Hey, Bennett, find out if people are happier on account of what he does.
Are you on the right side of this investigation?
I hope so.
Oh, that was.
Are you one of the people who has been going all around the country with this investigation?
Yes.
Are you a senator?
Yes.
Well, now who could this be? We may have
Stop pulling the wings off flies, Mr. Sir.
Well, we ought to give the head man the first crack. Are you Senator Kefauver?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Brown.
Wow. I just wanted to tell the senator I love his new show, What's My Crime?
I'm glad to be meeting you here tonight, Senator.
Yeah, under these kind of auspices. As a matter of fact, are you sure you want to be shown on television or just your hands?
You've been doing a brilliant job. We're delighted that you're on our panel. Just
As a matter of
much,
fact,
Miss Price.
and the program itself is one of the most interesting programs. I think they've shown that while you're on, half the cafes and the shows and everything are empty. So
Well,
you've got
I've been,
a mighty fine rating in addition to being a senator.
Well, I want
We'd
tell
like
you
to
something
have
else.
your
Miss-
rating.
Senator Kefauver has asked me to send his check, $50, to Hiwassee College in Madisonville, Tennessee, which is his home state, and it's to be donated to the student fund. Is that right, sir?
That's right.
Dr. Rowell is the president. We send it down to him.
That's correct.
Well, that's a very generous move, and we expect it from you. Thanks very much for being
Thank
our
you,
guest
Mr.
and What's My Line tonight. Hunter, will you sign in, please, sir?
So that was Kefauver, and I've never heard about him. I remember when I was first digging around. In fact, if it wasn't for Brett Weinstein and his brother Eric Weinstein getting so much visibility, I never would have heard of Kefauver, and let me explain why. When people get as boosted as Brett Weinstein does, with as little to say as Brett Weinstein really has, or at least useful to say, you wonder, it's like, what's going on here? And especially when his brother Eric, I find to be as equally unimpressive. It's just true. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of smart sounding things to say, I guess, at first, but once you start listening to why, like I think they're just blowing smoke. You wonder how it happened. Who did they know, or who did their parents know? There's some big questions out there about who their mom knew, and I haven't solved all of those riddles, but I do know that the father of Brett Weinstein, who I do have a page on, his name is Les Weinstein, UVW. Les Weinstein. Where is it? Les Weinstein. There's a more recent photo of him. Les Weinstein did not necessarily grow up in a wealthy family, but he got a law degree and moved to D.C. around the time of his marriage, or he was dating. I'm not really sure. And at a fairly young age, which means he didn't really necessarily have all the credentials yet. I think he was only in his 30s. In the year 1961, 1962, he was hired as the first intellectual property lawyer or intellectual property attorney in the United States Department of Justice Antitrust Division, which, as you can see, or as you can at least read some eyes from the Wikipedia page, was a huge part of Estes Kefauver's legacy. And at the time, running the Department of Justice was Robert F. Kennedy, dad of the current lifelong victim of the ultimate Truman Show, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And at the time that Les Weinstein was brought in to the United States Department of Justice as the very first hire of an intellectual property lawyer in the Antitrust Division, his assignment was research and content related to the reworking of the FDA, amendments that were being proposed to the FDA by Estes Kefauver and and Senator Harris. No relation at all to Kamala Harris, by the way. In fact, Les Weinstein was given a plane ticket, I think around 1961, to go to Denmark or the Netherlands to see firsthand what was going on there with respect to all of their claims about thalidomide. So those FDA amendments, which added the language safe and effective, meaning it's not just safe to take, but it does what it says, was a radical addition to the FDA. Those FDA amendments were a radical addition. And you would think, well, that would always should have been there. But, the FDA came about focusing on cosmetics and food. Now, food inherently gives you calories. So food needed to be safe. This is the history of the FDA, right? And it's kind of assumed that if you don't get sick, it's safe. And it's also assumed you're going to get some calories from it. So it's effectively giving you some calories. So, and cosmetics, well, it's safe, right? Is it going to burn your skin? Is it safe to use? And of course, it's effective because you can see its effectiveness. But when it came to medication, effective is a very different beast. Now, pain medicine, people can tell you if pain medicine is effective or not. But when it comes to anti-cancer drugs or antibiotics or all of these other new types of drugs, being safe is one thing, but how to tell, are they effective? And there were a lot of mystery drugs, a lot of bold claims were being made that were simply not effective. They simply didn't do what they said they did. And testing them to be sure that they're safe wasn't enough. So Estes Kefauver had very big vision about how to amend the FDA, but it was whittled down significantly. But at the very least, he got the language effective in there. But Les Weinstein, ever since his very early days of his career, he was firsthand aware of the significance of effective. And, follow the trail, okay? Several decades later, he is the most, among the 5 or 10 most sought after arbitrators in the entire United States of America with respect to intellectual property. He's loaded. Now, maybe he's very good at what he does. I don't know. But he knew the future of the Human Genome Project. He knew the future of personalized medicine. He knew that the FDA at some point is going to get crushed and pushed out of the way because we can't have an FDA that tests effective in a future where we need to be using people as experimental test animals. And medicine is no longer about helping people, but it's about giving people something that you say is helping, but you're actually giving to them so that you can collect data in return to feed into the computers, which are part of the Human Genome Project and taking over control of the evolution of the human species. Les Weinstein knew that for a long time. And it's no surprise that at some point he made suggestions to both of his two sons, his two boys, his two children, to get involved into this world of impacting public perception and eventually podcasting. Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein. So the Truman Show of RFK Jr.'s life, which kind of started with the assassination of his own dad, has been connected with the Weinsteins ever since 1962 and Estes Kefauver. Here we are, 60-something years later. We're still dealing with the same network of people. It would be easy to see. No, let me reword that. You can see it. It's obvious. But it's only obvious if you can hear this message. And you can't hear this message because it's an honest message. If you talk about Kefauver, if you talk about the real history of the FDA, if you talk about the opioid epidemic, if you want to talk about how computing was being advanced through NASA, if you want to talk about those types of concepts, if you want to talk about the real story of 9/11 being the Human Genome Project and experimental DNA vaccines, you get 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. You get not even enough financial support to cover the monthly bills of the accounts necessary to run a very small program. That's what you get. If you talk about space lasers, if you just blame everything on the CIA and the DOD indiscriminately, if you're willing to believe that 20 shooters show up to every event, If you're never willing to say the numbers of the opioid epidemic, and not just say it once in a while, but what does it actually mean and how the data was actually used, you can get hundreds of thousands of viewers. You'll get invited to events. You'll be on the stage. You'll be the star. You're willing because then you are playing along. So there was that. So an hour and 40 in. Wow, I'm almost on my way to having a 2-hour program. That certainly wasn't expected here. The other person I wanted to bring attention to is a man named Kevin Ingram, Ingram, born in 1958. I never heard of Kevin Ingram. He does have a Wikipedia page. I think there's a lot of misleading things in this Wikipedia page as it's currently represented. And I found Kevin Ingram in a suspiciously long 10 or 12-page story that was ready to go before 9/11 about him. He pled guilty in late August of 2001. This up-and-coming bond trader from New York City, noteworthy for the fact that he's black. He's an African American. You know, Wall Street is a white man's club. I'm not saying whites are better, but I mean, look, you have to be blind. You have to be blind if you go to Wall Street and you don't notice wow, it's not a lot of color around here. So, in this world, Kevin Ingram, as shown here in Black Enterprise 1992, is a handsome, young, successful black man at Goldman Sachs. He's currently, at that point, I think he already had 40 or 50 people under him. He had a degree in chemical engineering from MIT. He went to Stanford, which is questionable as far as everything that goes on out there. But everything's okay right now for him. There's nothing here to suggest that he was a goof-off. He's again in Black Enterprise magazine. Here we are in 1997. He had then made a transition to Deutsche Bank. He has about, 80, 100 people under him at that time. It's noteworthy that he has befriended a man named Robert Rubin, who was the Secretary of the United States Treasury in the Clinton administration. And Robert Rubin was a longtime board member and senior person. I don't think he was ever a CEO, but maybe senior board member at Goldman Sachs. Robert Rubin is credited with much of the economic revival and success under the Clinton administration, running the Department of Treasury side by side with the man who's running the Fed, Alan Greenspan. So when you are walking into the office to file complaints to your boss or your mentor, Robert Rubin, you're at a very important table. And everything, all the metadata suggests that things are, and I think he does have some intelligence family connections, maybe. But things are going okay right now. And then something weird happens with Robert Rubin around 1998, late 1998. Suddenly, his the collateralized mortgage obligation, the CMO groups have layoffs at Morgan Stanley and Deutsche Bank, and then he winds up getting involved in trying to, fund this Harlem nightclub, Milton's, which previously was being, or Minton's, which was trying to be revived previously by Robert De Niro, who we know is already connected with Hillary Clinton, who's about to become U.S. Senator, and Harvey Weinstein. And then, not too long after that, this is where things go crazy. He is now being accused, where's the newspaper articles, of an arms probe involving the ATF. And look at this photo. I mean, suddenly, he is like, he goes from someone that looks, friendly and happy and like, hey, it's a nice guy, shiny, to these arrest photos where he looks like someone that's ready to steal your used Toyota Celica. Like what? Like, And the whole story of who he is and what he's doing changes. He goes from being this hardworking, outstanding man at Goldman Sachs to, he's not showing up for work. He's partying with P. Diddy or Sean Combs or whatever the heck he was called back at the time. And he wants to make some money on the side because he likes going out with pinup models. Not that I can blame a guy from wanting to go out with models, but his whole story changes into being this man that is, of questionable moral, with a questionable moral compass, even willing to make money, okay, by making funds available to help terrorists buy weapons, including machine guns, Stinger missiles, and even components of nuclear weapons. And not just to any old terrorist, but specifically Osama bin Laden and the Taliban. And then here we are, and this builds upon what we were saying earlier, okay? Then this is the article. Harvey Weinstein in Talk Magazine, the magazine which seems to have come out of nowhere to sort of replace the vibe that did come out of the George magazine for JFK Jr. Now this is Harvey Weinstein's magazine, which kind of behind the scenes is very, very positive about RFK Jr., but also accepting the fact that RFK Jr. can't be senator just yet. We need to put him on ice because Hillary Clinton needs to be senator first. And, I mean, look, red eyes with dollars in them. I mean, come on. It's almost as if he was willing to accept a role for the national security state, for the big agenda, as the bad guy. And they were going to, play up the fact that, well, I guess this is what happens when you have a diversity hire. A lot of African Americans, a lot of black Americans in the entrepreneur list were pissed. They're like, this makes us look bad. And you know what? They were freaking right. It does make them look bad. Hollywood's already doing a fine enough job on its own. And then you can't make this up. He was given a temporary office in the World Trade Center on the 84th floor where the plane hit. You can't make that up. The plane hit his office. This is every bit as, in fact, this is even more damning than whatever the flight was that hit the Pentagon office. You could say that plane, which was a missile, when that plane hit the Pentagon, they were doing it to cover up financial, whatever other financial wrongdoings may have been happening in the Pentagon, and I'm sure there were plenty. This guy's office was hit. His office was hit. In a magazine that comes out in this magazine brought to you by Harvey Weinstein, maybe even greater connected to the bunch of filmmakers and Miramax, who knows who else involved in the whole world of creating the Truman Show of RFK Jr. A magazine, if you look at the covers on the magazine anyways, if you look at the covers on this magazine, I think I've done the math that about a third of the people that were on the cover on the magazine wound up years later. Actually, if you factor out people such as Robin Williams, who's died, almost half of the people were early COVID survivors. Elizabeth Hurley wasn't. And America's mayor. I've done some research on some of the earlier articles around 2002 and 2003 on Kevin Ingram. And another curious data point is that you'll see mentions of Adnan Khashoggi, plane hijackers, etc., such as from 2002 and 2003. But not one of these magazine articles, I think this was probably one of the best articles here. This was in the Broward Palm Beach Times. So it has a weird Florida connection as well. None of these articles mention a man named, you might have heard of him, Jeffrey Epstein. None. It's all Kevin Ingram. But if you go to Whitney Webb's 2 books, which I have accessible on Kindle, so I can search through them, 2,000 pages, not one mention of Kevin Ingram. Kevin Ingram doesn't exist, according to Whitney Webb. Who does exist? Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein's a real person, and Jeffrey Epstein was obviously a socialite, and Jeffrey Epstein was obviously, again, had intelligence connections for quite a while. I'm not doubting that. That's all true. But I suspect that when you really want to start digging, you'll see that a lot of the Jeffrey Epstein stories around 2002, 3, and 4 are probably either fabricated or super hyped up to take away from the real stories, which they were seeding, by the way. I think, I don't actually, of this guy here facilitating weapon sales and replacing it with a super hyped up version of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this stuff is still much in the works. This is still very loosey-goosey, okay? I have made it a rule, a guiding rule, to not talk about Epstein other than to highlight there's an irrational focus on Epstein. And to show that the longer I go without focusing on Epstein, the more I keep learning. In fact, what I just said, none of this would have been articulated if I was suckered into reading all of the existing books and all of the existing narratives. Those existing books and those existing narratives, which get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views and subscribers and so on, are all put out there precisely so this stuff is not seen. And the longer I do searches without Jeffrey Epstein, the more stuff I keep finding. Eventually, what's going to happen is I'm going to have enough of a framework that I can then start to substitute in where Jeffrey Epstein is currently being said to be, and I'm going to be able to use the real names of what were going to be conspirators, which were being set up for whatever the events were back then. Last weird data point. Kevin Ingram's son currently works as an MD at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Different department, but same organization as Paul Offit, who was just on. A key person, right? Actually, is part of the Frontline show just a couple days ago, talking about this unstoppable psychopathic monster of RFK Jr., who himself is just a Truman Show victim. He's so badly damaged. I can't be mad at him for when I say, what about this drug epidemic? Hey, we lost a son. And his response is, what about Judy Mikovits? And if you don't believe that's what he said, you can watch the video clip that I have. That's exactly how he said. It was either he is not thinking I don't think he's thinking at all. It's kind of spooky. Oh, that's right. His wife is Cheryl Hines, the on-screen wife of Larry David, the least funniest person in America. I could find a random stick in the woods and laugh at it more than I can at anything Larry David has done. There is nothing funnier, less funny on earth than Larry David. I didn't know it was possible to be so unfunny. He is the only human who I don't think could make me laugh. The funniest thing is Larry David is considered to be the kingpin, like the gateway of becoming a comedian these days. I don't understand it. Maybe he's in the Truman Show too somehow. I don't know. And he believes he's funny. I don't get it. All right, thanks for joining, V. Hey, King. Chelsea Chelsea Clinton launched a podcast that discussed Maha. King Kara, I'm glad you mentioned that. You know who was jogging around the World Trade Center when the planes hit? 7 blocks away? Chelsea Clinton. In fact, Chelsea Clinton's story of her account of 9/11 in the World Trade Center premiered in Talk Magazine. The same magazine, by the way, who their star conservative was Tucker Carlson. Oh, that's right. Tucker Carlson right now is still controlling the 9/11 narrative. Pretending to be your friend. Wasn't Tucker Carlson like the laughing his ass off speaker at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk? I've tried to give Tucker Carlson all the rope I could find. I've been thankful for every little quip that Tucker Carlson has made that seemed to be, out of the ordinary. But, man, things are now different. All right, Christy, thank you to you, too. It's almost 2 hours. I think it's time for me to scoot. I didn't plan for this to be 2 hours, but obviously there was a lot to cover here. And I think I'm just going to take this and post it as it is. I think this is for those who can listen to me for 2 hours. I think this is going to be a very enlightening video. And if nothing else, it's going to provide you a good framework for where we are and where we're going and how we're tying a lot of things together here. Going back to earlier, I said these claims of what to do from here. What to do from here? What to do from here? Look, everything that we've been able to accumulate and put together and document and archive has taken tens of thousands of hours and countless dollars and a major sacrifice of my life. I don't feel as though that it was all for nothing. At some point, there needs to be an assembly line. At some point, you don't look at the running back that just ran the ball 7 yards and has like 3 defenders hanging on him and dragging him down and say, look, why can't you make it to the end zone? At some point, you have to go, hey, hand me the ball. And it's not for the running back to go, well, gee, here you go, and make it easy for you to grab it. Sometimes you got to get in there and get roughed up and grab the ball and know that you can carry it another few yards. I don't know who that's going to be. I already got the defenders hanging on me. I'm already being dragged down to the ground. I'm still pushing. But at some point, someone else needs to go, well, okay, maybe more research needs to be done. Maybe more needs to be documented. Maybe someone out there is listening to this who hasn't already lost 7 of their peak earning years of their life. Maybe you're in a position to go, you know what? Let me try to wrestle the ball out from your hands and take it another few yards and see what happens. I have no reason to apologize. I know I haven't put it all out there on a silver platter for everyone, but I know relative to what I had to work with when I started, this is a freaking gold mine. And I have every confidence that someone else eventually, even if it's just 1 or 2 people, are going to find this and they're going to go, okay, I think I know what to do next. And I'm good with that. I sleep well at night knowing I carried the ball pretty far. Thanks to you. Thanks to my friends. I know I've carried it pretty far. And I know someone out there is going to take it and run a few more yards with it. I know it. I don't know who. I may never even meet them. That's not the point. I sleep knowing I did my job. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. That's 2 hours. Thank you. Take care. I appreciate all your support. And have a great night, and God bless. See you tomorrow.